Happy Halloween, hunters! Welcome back to Super Fan Natural. Guys, it's Halloween time, which, of course, is my favorite time of year. How could it not be? We celebrate it by doing some of my favorite things. Telling ghost stories, decorating your house, wearing a mask to hide your true self from the cruel, judgmental world, getting candy, and of course, watching horror movies. I sure do love scary movies, which is probably one of the reasons why I love Supernatural so much. It's basically 300-some mini-scary movies. Unfortunately, the Winchesters never got a chance to cross over with an actual horror movie, which is a big shame. It would have been really fun to see them take on one of the classic slashers. I can't make an episode like that actually happen, but I can write a little fanfic outlining how I think it would go. And since it's Halloween time, what better killer for the boys to take on than Michael Myers? Now, this isn't just a death battle. In this video, I'm basically going to outline how I would write an episode where Sam and Dean take on a case involving Michael, who isn't a fictional character. It would take place in an alternate universe where the original Halloween, and only that one, actually happened. I'm going to try and make this as faithful to both properties as I can, but there may be a few liberties taken. Also, I use the names of several characters from other installments of the Halloween franchise, but that's just for fun. The ones that appear in this story aren't necessarily the same ones from the actual movies. Finally, I just want to say that I'm not a professional writer or anything, so please be kind. The episode opens in Haddonfield, 2 days before Halloween. We see a teenager named Corey Cunningham being driven to a babysitting job by his girlfriend Allison because his sister has his car for the night. She drops him off, and as he enters the house, we see someone is watching. Once the parents leave for their costume party, the kid Julian says that Corey promised to bring something fun and spooky for them to do for Halloween. Corey asks the kid if he's ever heard the story of Michael Myers. Julian responds, yeah, everyone knows about him. He was a crazy guy that got killed back in the 70s. Corey corrects him, explaining that after getting popped, Michael disappeared and nobody knows for sure what happened to him. He says that later that night there was a mysterious fire at the Myers house, and since the cops found his mask at the scene, they assume that he caused the fire and also died in it. However, they never found his body, so there's a good chance he's still out there. And it's said that if a babysitter in Haddonfield says boogeyman 3 times while holding a Halloween mask, then Michael Myers will appear and gut them. Julian isn't impressed, and he mocks Corey for thinking a stupid story would scare him. In response, Corey says that since he's not scared, then Julian wouldn't mind if he tries summoning the boogeyman. The kid retorts that he knows it doesn't work because his friend Jamie tried it with her babysitter last year. However, Corey reaches into his backpack and pulls out the real half-charred mask of Michael Myers. Julian asks where he got it, and Corey doesn't say. He holds out the mask and says boogeyman 2 times before Julian stops him. However, after Corey mocks him for being scared, the kid tells him to finish it, and he does. Nothing happens, and we cut to Julian later in the night in his bed. He hears footsteps outside his door, and he tells Corey to knock it off. However, as the door creaks open, we see Michael Myers standing there, menacingly. Julian freaks out, but of course it's just Corey playing a prank. He tries to calm the kid down when suddenly he hears glass shattering in the living room. Corey tells Julian to stay put while he goes to investigate. After a moment, Julian hears Corey yelp, followed by a thud. He calls out, and he doesn't hear anything, so he assumes Corey is still messing with him. He goes to investigate and finds Corey on the ground in front of the broken window. When he gets close enough, he realizes that the babysitter's throat has been slit. He screams in horror and backs up, only to bump into the real Michael Myers, who has reclaimed his mask. As the Halloween theme starts playing, Julian bolts through the broken window to safety. The theme continues as the camera zooms in on a nearby jack-o'-lantern, which explodes into the Supernatural title card, which for this episode would be orange and dripping with pumpkin guts. Back at the bunker, Dean tells Sam that for Halloween this year, he doesn't feel like watching movies. No, he wants to be in the field, but he doesn't just want a case on Halloween, he wants a real Halloween case. Sam tells him that he's been looking, but unfortunately there just isn't much going on this year. He rattles off a few possible cases before landing on the Haddonfield murder, which catches his attention. See, not only is Sam interested in serial killers, both of Mike's previous outings were investigated by hunters. I mean, it makes sense, right? A 6-year-old snaps for no reason, then 15 years later goes on another killing spree that ends up walking away from 6 bullets in a 2-story fall. Definitely worth looking into, especially when Loomis described Michael as being possessed by evil and having the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Initially, Dean isn't sure about the case, but the idea of taking out a famous serial killer who may be possessed or undead is enough to get him on board. They head to the local police station, where they meet the Sheriff Hawkins, who, after seeing fake FBI badges, fills them in on everything they learned from Julian. The brothers figure that Corey was targeted for the mask, and when questioned as to where he got it, Hawkins admits that he's the one who got it out of the evidence lockup and loaned it to the kid. They ask why, and he reveals that it was a favor for his secretary Kelly, who was Corey's sister. They ask Hawkins if he has any idea of where or when the killer will strike next, but he doesn't know. He has all of available officers out on patrol, but the department is tiny. Dean wonders if Laurie Strode might have some insight based on her encounter with Michael. However, the sheriff tells him that she left town years ago, changed her name, and just kind of disappeared. Before they can ask any more questions, a call comes in about a possible homicide. The boys decide to split, with Dean accompanying the police to the crime scene, while Sam goes to question Kelly, who was given the day off. Dean rides along with the sheriff to the house of Ben Tramer, who didn't show up for work. When his boss at the local auto shop couldn't get a hold of him, he called for a welfare check, and when the responding officer arrived, he found a nasty scene. There's no sign of Ben. However, they did find several large bloodstains, as well as a pile of human teeth. Dean sweeps the house looking for signs of the supernatural. There's no sulfur, but he does pick up EMF. However, there's power lines nearby, so who knows if that's accurate. Across town, Sam arrives at the Cunningham residence, where he finds Kelly, along with her mom and younger brother Kenny, who's sick. Kelly explains that she wanted to use her brother's car to go to a party out of town, but he would only agree if she would get him the mask to wear for Halloween. So she told the sheriff where the annual Halloween high school kegger was going to be in order to get it. Sam asks if she noticed anything strange about the mask, weird smells or stains, or just bad vibes. Kelly says that she didn't like having it around. She couldn't be sure why, but it made her feel uneasy, and she wasn't the only one. Kelly explains that after she got off work, she got a ride from Allison, her best friend and her brother's girlfriend, and she drove to Corey's work, where she took the car, and Allison took him to Julian's house. During the ride, Allison also said that the mask gave off weird vibes. Sam asks where he can find her, and actually she's right behind him. Her parents are out of the country for the week, and so after Corey got, she wanted to stay with someone in order to feel safe. Sam gets a call from Dean, and as he leaves the house, Kelly decides to go take a nap. Outside, the bros catch each other up, and Dean says that he put out a call to Garth to try and find Laurie. Inside, Kelly looks down at Sam from her bedroom window before making her way towards her bed. However, before she can get there, her closet bursts open, and from the darkness, Michael reaches out and grabs her. She's yanked inside, and as the door closes, we hear muffled screams and slashing sounds. Outside, Sam is about to drive away, however he catches a glimpse of Michael in Kelly's bedroom window. He bursts into the house as Michael descends the staircase. He opens fire and manages to land 2 devil's trap bullets in the Shape's chest. Mike stops and slouches against the wall, and believing he's trapped, Sam pulls out the demon-killing knife and charges. However, as he brings the knife down, Michael grabs the blade with his bare hand and, seemingly unaffected by any damage, manages to wrench it away from Sam, who he tosses across the room. Michael takes a hold of his new weapon and prepares to take on Sam. However, hearing the sound of police sirens approaching, he decides to take off instead. The brothers regroup, and Sam tells Dean that Michael isn't a demon. They wonder if maybe he could be a ghost, like maybe Michael really did die all those years ago, and his spirit has just been dormant within the mask. After seeing that Corey worked at the same auto shop as Ben Tramer, Dean postulates that Mike is possessing Ben. He figures that the Shape's ghost may have jumped into Tramer when Kelly and Allison brought Corey the mask, and he's now working to take out anyone who messed with the mask, which would mean that the sheriff is next. Sam agrees that Ben is probably a vessel for a ghost. However, he thinks that Michael is going after the family of the guy who put on the mask, meaning that Corey's mom and brother would be in danger. The bros decide to quarantine all 3 together, somewhere safe, in hopes that they're right. They round everyone up and tell them about their theories and plans. They go through the usual shtick of convincing everyone that they aren't crazy, and eventually everyone is on board. As they're heading out, Allison asks to come with, as she doesn't feel safe and doesn't really have anyone else to stay with. They initially say no, since if they're right, Michael will probably be coming right to them, but eventually they relent and allow her to tag along. Cut to the police station, where Sam is coordinating with a pair of officers who will help stand guard, while Dean watches over the potential targets in a heavily ghost-proofed holding area to which he has the only keys. The sheriff still can't believe that monsters are real, and he asks Dean what else is out there. He tells him about all the crazy things he's seen: witches, vampires, crazy people that bring drawings to life, all sorts of nightmares that people think are just made up. The mom asks him how he can possibly bear to live knowing what's out there, and he tells her that, in a weird way, their job actually makes the world less scary. After all, part of fighting evil is understanding it, demystifying it, figuring out how it works, and grounding it in reality. Once you remove the mystery, then things just aren't as scary, because you can not only fight back, but also proactively combat evil. As they talk, Kenny, the little brother, says that he feels sick. His mom checks his forehead and finds that he's burning up. She argues with Dean about going to the hospital when suddenly the power goes out. Sam tells him that it's not just them, the whole town is dark, so a pair of officers are going to the power station to check it out. A few minutes later, they get a call from the cops saying that they're pretty sure they're looking at the dead body of Michael Myers. Understandably skeptical, Sam goes to check it out while Dean stays with the others. At the power station, Sam is shown the bodies. One belongs to a worker who took a blade to the throat, while the other, which is heavily burned and slumped over some electrical stuff, does appear to be Mike, complete with jumpsuit and melted mask. The cops tell him that they found him there and assume he fried himself trying to mess with the power. Sam lifts up the mask slightly and sees that the body is missing its teeth, confirming that he's looking at Ben Tramer's corpse. He calls Dean and tells him what he found, and they aren't really sure what to think. I mean, they found the guy they suspected of being possessed, and his mask is definitely charred enough to send a ghost packing, so maybe they just got lucky for once? Sam says he's going to look around in case they miss something, just to be safe. They hang up, and the sheriff asks Dean what's up. He tells him that they may be in the clear, but it's a little too early to be excited. Kenny's fever is getting worse, so his mom states that she's taking him to the doctor. Dean says no, but she retorts that she's already lost 2 children and won't sit around while her last one needs help. Dean reluctantly agrees to take them, though he wants the sheriff and Allison to go with. Unfortunately, the sheriff says he's needed at the station due to the power outage, and Allison has fallen asleep, and since she's not a target anyway, Dean agrees to just let her rest. Out at the power station, Sam is examining the corpse while he waits for the ambulance. He notices that Ben's body doesn't seem to have any bullet wounds, and he also doesn't seem to have the demon-killing knife on him. Also, upon taking a closer look at the charred remains of the mask, he notices that it appears to be a different brand, a detail that only a superfan of both research and true crime would notice. Back at the police station, Dean is heading out with the Cunninghams when he gets a call from an unknown number. He answers it and finds out that it's none other than Laurie Strode, who would absolutely be played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Laurie explains that she didn't want to believe that Michael was back, but eventually she realized that she wouldn't be able to live with herself if she could have helped and didn't. Dean tells her about the attacks and how they might actually have gotten him. However, Laurie desperately pleads with Dean to understand that Michael isn't human. Instead, he's evil, just pure, random evil in the shape of a man. Dean asks if she knows why Michael targeted her all those years ago, and Laurie replies that she isn't sure there even was a reason. She was just there, and her friends paid the price. The mention of her friends triggers something in Dean. Dean gets another call, so he thanks Laurie and switches to the other line. It's Sam who tells him that they were wrong. Ben wasn't possessed, he was always just a decoy, a distraction, meaning that Michael is still out there. Dean has a realization and tells Sam to get to the station ASAP, because they were also wrong about who Mike's target was. Dean runs to the back of the building and asks the sheriff who's watching Allison. It's one of the nameless deputies, so as you might expect, when Dean finds his body sitting outside the holding area, he's had his throat slit and eyes jabbed out. As Dean looks at him, we see the silhouette of Michael's mask in the darkness behind him. Oh yeah, in case it wasn't clear, the power is still out, and the only light comes from flashlights and a couple lanterns. Mike stabs Dean in the shoulder, and as he whirls around with his gun drawn, Michael slashes his hand, causing him to drop the gun, which is then kicked down into the dark hallway. Dean tries to fist fight him, however he's injured, and Mike is real strong, so eventually he loses the keys and ends up pinned to the wall with a hand around his throat. Michael is about to stab him again when the sheriff and his other officers show up. However, instead of opening fire, they stupidly yell freeze, giving Michael time to pull Dean in front of him as a human shield. As the cops hesitate to shoot, the killer rushes them. He slams Dean into the sheriff, knocking them both against the wall, before driving the knife down into stunt cop number 2's face. With one attacker dead and the other 2 seemingly unconscious, Michael unlocks the holding room and stands in the doorway. Allison wakes up and freaks out. However, before the killer can get to her, Dean empties the sheriff's gun into his back. He drops to the floor, and Dean picks up the other officer's gun and moves close enough for a headshot. However, the gun jams, giving Michael a chance to pop up and poke Dean in the leg. He drops to the ground as Allison runs out of the room. However, as she passes Michael, he swipes her in the leg and manages to slice her ankle. Dean tackles him, allowing Allie to hobble away. However, Michael drives the blade into his side several times and slams him into the wall, effectively taking him out of the fight. Allison manages to reach the front of the station. However, due to her injury and the darkness, she stumbles and falls over, allowing Michael to catch up. He steps on her injured ankle before kneeling down on top of her. He raises the knife into the air. However, in her desperation, Allie yanks the mask off of his face. If you pay attention to the Halloween movies, then you know that if the boogeyman gets unmasked, he'll prioritize putting it back on over finishing off his target. So, Mike grabs the mask and stands up to reapply his face. In that moment, Sam bursts through the door with a machete drawn, and with one fluid motion, he separates Michael's unmasked head from his body, killing him. We cut to the hospital, where Dean is resting after getting stitched up. Sam enters the room, and Dean asks how Allison is doing, to which Sam replies that she'll recover, physically at least. He asks Dean how he knew that she was the real target, and he says that he didn't know for sure, but after talking to Lori, he thought maybe Michael went after Kelly because she was Allison's friend, rather than Corey's sister. He theorized that Mike had followed Corey for the mask, but then zeroed in on his girlfriend, just like he did with Lori. Sam says it makes sense, but what doesn't make sense is how he ran every test they know on Michael's body, and nothing came up positive, meaning that for all intents and purposes, he seems to have just been human. They talk about how that shouldn't be the case. After all, if he was just a guy, how could he tank all that damage? How did he show up right when the mask was removed from police custody? How did he get around town, and for that matter, where had he been for the last 40 years? In the end, they consider that maybe there really are things out there that even they can't fully understand. I know that doesn't seem like it fits Supernatural, but it's kind of the core of Michael Myers as a monster. He's supposed to be something that you can't fully figure out. Dean says that he knows one thing for sure, and that's what they need to do next. Cut to early the next morning. In a field outside of town, the Winchesters, along with the sheriff and Allison, burn Mike's body in order to hopefully put him to rest for good. The sheriff pulls out the mask and prepares to torch it. However, Allison grabs it from him. She stares down at its blank face for a moment before chucking it into the flames. The bros hit the road, and as Sam drives them out of town, Dean remarks that this Halloween sucked. In the final shot of the episode, we cut back to Allison as she stares into the fire, the blank expression on her face eerily reminiscent of the boogeyman's mask. And scene. I hope you guys enjoyed this little fanfic. I know some people probably wanted a more overtly supernatural Michael Myers, but to me that really goes against the core of his character. If I didn't explain something properly, let me know and I'll do my best to explain the thinking. If this video does well, then maybe I'll do more like it in the future. We'll see what happens, but for now, carry on, and happy Halloween.